Now, I've been playing World of Warcraft's Season of Discovery for the past few days, and this is how it went. Now, before we get further into the video, I just wanted to give you a little bit of history about me. I play all MMOs. Black Desert, Lord of the Rings, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, so all of them. I love every single MMO and I play them to some degree. Some are better than others, but I try them all. With that being said, Guild Wars 2 is my main MMO. I've done every single raid, every single challenge mode, every single fractal, which is like equivalent to a dungeon or a mythic on every challenge mode, which means I've done pretty much the hardest content in game. I do guides on a lot of Guild Wars things, and a lot of my friends are either raid sellers or speedrunners because they're really high in that degree. So even though I don't consider myself a very good raider or player, I play a lot of Guild Wars 2, and so I consider myself a Guild Wars 2 player. So for World of Warcraft's Season of Discovery, I've gone in completely blind. I've not watched any guides, any material, and I've just gone into it and tried to experience it as fresh as possible. The only reason I realized about it is because every single time I popped up retail, there would be a little thing about Season of Discovery, and I thought to myself, that's interesting, let's have a look at it. So I installed it and I've gone into it. As stated before, I went into Season of Discovery completely blind, and I went in as a troll hunter. First of all, I had to kind of reacquaint myself and re-change up some of the settings because they are quite different when you start the game. But immediately you get into the starter zone, you start to clear a few things, and you notice, first of all, there is a ton of players currently playing. Like, it is very hard to kill some of the mobs because there are so many people trying to kill them. Luckily, because everybody is so low leveled and it is classic, it takes you quite a while to kill. So most people are busy on one mob at a time, so it's not too bad where someone's grouping up all of the mobs in the area and killing them, because if you pull more than one mob, chances are you're probably going to die. But quite soon after starting, I realized that I had collected a certain item, a rune. Now obviously I'd never played Hunter before, so at first I was like, is this just part of Hunter? I was a bit confused, but then I saw that pretty much I could use the rune and put it on my gloves, which was quite interesting. I really was actually taken back, and my first thought was, damn, this is pretty cool. I like the fact that I could get 2 runes fairly early on in the game quite easily, and these 2 would kind of give you either, especially for the hunter, more of an AoE or more of a single target niche, and they did immediately impact gameplay. I like the fact that the ability was not just a passive, it was an active skill. I know there are passives. Now obviously I had a few thoughts. How many of these are there? How do they work? Where do they go? Do they all just go in the gloves and I've got to just pick one? And so on and so forth. But as I played the game more and asked more just in world chat about where they are, what they do, everything, I kind of have gathered an idea of how they work. Now obviously I tried to go in blind, I didn't go into the wikis, I tried to use world chat, because after I had started, after my first day, I was interested, so I watched the developer announcement of Season of Discovery afterwards, and basically they said that it's going to be a rediscovery of the base Azeroth, and it must be up to the community to try figure out how to unlock these, where they are, how they all work. And so I thought to myself, let me not go into guides and YouTube, but rather just ask in world chat. And first things first, the community initially, especially on EU, has been incredible. Like, people have been so willing to help. The amount of people on this server is incredible. Everybody's willing to team up to get quests done, and especially one of my favorite things is when you're running around, whether you're running in town or out in open world, if you're running past a mage or a druid or anyone, they're throwing buffs on you, which I think is just such a nice and cool, like, kind of, you feel like, damn, the Horde, or maybe in your case, maybe the Alliance, or just, they care, like, we're a team, like, we're doing this together. Even though I'm doing my own thing, chances are I'm going to maybe do a dungeon or a raid with you in the future, and like, we're a team. It really has such a nice community feel at this point in time. Everybody's been incredibly helpful with, you know, leveling, doing dungeons, and also like trying to discover more about these runes and how they work. So at the end of the day, you got to think, what are the pros and cons? Well, on the pros and on the positive sides, I would say that Season of Discovery is a great step forward. Personally, I like games like Path of Exile that have this ever-evolving changing of the meta. Even though it is seasonal content, they bring in things, they see what works, they expand upon them, they see what doesn't work, they get rid of them. I think that is pretty much one of the best ways to do content in a game, and to let the community decide. Like, say for instance, if they expanded the amount of glyphs and positions glyphs can be used, and to try and elevate glyph on glyph, trying to obviously steer away from meta builds. That's going to be the hardest part of things like this, because that happens in all games. Or if meta builds do come into play, because that is what will happen, to try and steer them towards just multiple different metas within one like class. Like say for instance, if the hunter can get a good melee one, a good beast mastery one, and a good ranged one, that I feel is pretty good. One thing I would like, although I know it's not necessarily part of Classic till Wrath of the Lich King, is multiple trait trees so that you can try out different styles of play. What makes obviously playing World of Warcraft in Classic quite tough is that you're pretty much locked into one aspect of play. Like if I go as a ranged hunter with my bow and arrow, I can't really utilize a lot of the melee effects, and sometimes it's kind of nice to switch your gameplay up a little bit. Or if you're playing say a healer or a tank, it's nice always to on open world be able to switch to maybe more of a PvP-ish build, or also like maybe a bit more of a DPS build. Another major positive for me is the fact that they've taken Season 1 to level 25. I think that going all the way to 60 would have been too much for the community, and I think this also congregates the player base around certain content, which I think is the best way to do it, and to slowly release content expanding so that the entire player base moves as one. I think another major positive is the fact that they're basically bringing in new content. I think that's what the Classic community's always wanted. They've always wanted to go back to Classic, that style, that community, but have extended content and new content brought out in the Classic format. And if Blizzard can do this correctly, it will actually be so much to their benefit, because they'll be able to hit so many multiple heads at the same time. They'll be able to have such a massive Classic community, a retail community, as well as obviously the Classic progression community that's going from Wrath of the Lich King into Cataclysm at the moment. So I think they'll be able to expand to such a broader dynamic. And I think one of the other big positives for me is the fact that they've done this glyph system. I think it is so good. I like the fact that there's no cost to change your glyphs, so as you want to, you can switch between glyphs. It's brilliant. I think that obviously if they had put some sort of like, you know, you got to buy items or this or that, or you can only change once a day, like they've done so much in a lot of the previous content. If you think of Shadowlands and that, all these borrowed power style of plays, they just aren't fun to have to wait 24 hours or to go somewhere to be able to switch your borrowed power. Being able to have borrowed power in this case is fine, and being able to switch when you want to whatever style of play you want to do is brilliant. I think that this was a huge step in the right direction, and I would love to see more of this. I personally think this is probably one of the best contents they've released in ages. Now we have to look at the negatives. To be honest, I don't really see that much negative, because this isn't their main game. It's not like they've stopped retail to take a risk on this. This is kind of, in my opinion, it feels like a bit of a side project for them, and they can do whatever they want. Like at this current period, I've heard that a couple of builds are absolutely brokenly strong, where some builds are just very weak. And that's fine, because with the new season release, they can tweak numbers. They've basically got free reign to do what they want. So even though I'd say that balance could be a bit of a negative, I don't think it's going to be as much of a negative. Another, not necessarily negative, but something that I think they need to have in mind is, once season 2 and 3 and so forth get going, how will that affect newer players that want to jump into that content? There is going to be a large amount of the player base that might not get in initially on season 1, but by season 2 or 3 they might know that, oh, there's a lot of content and this is how exciting and fun it is. How do they kind of not necessarily catch up? What I'm trying to say is I hope they don't go too much into like, oh, level boost, or oh, this or that. Because that is something that a lot of WoW players and the Classic community in general don't like about the modern game. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and a subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, thank you so much for watching anyway. Come hang out with me on Twitch anytime, probably a link above me, one in the description below, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Cheers.